So I typically start with the capacitors. So we have 6 capacitors here. And what I typically do is I do this a little differently than some people do. I'll show you both ways. So I'm just going to drop a capacitor on to the PCB board near one of the little places where it's supposed to go. So you're going to be soldering it directly on. You see right there you have one spot for one end of the capacitor and one for the other end of the capacitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right next to those guys right there where it's supposed to be. And I'm going to take my soldering iron and I'm going to put it on one of those little squares. And I'm going to give it a little bit of solder, and it's going to melt a little bit there. And I'm going to use this end of the solder to just kind of push it where it needs to be. And once I've done that, and I can see that it's sticking to the solder, I'll go ahead and just lift my soldering iron away, allowing the solder there to harden. And then I'll just get the other side, which is a lot easier at this point. So this is how I do it. Now another method you can use involves a pair of tweezers. So what you have to do is get some solder on your iron tip beforehand, and then grab one of these guys. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. Grab one of the capacitors with the tweezers. You want to kind of do the same thing. You want to hold your soldering iron over one of the little ports to put an end of the capacitor. And then just remove it like that. And then you can touch up the other end the same way. Or you just take like that. There we go. So whichever method you use, keep in mind that the soldering iron, when you remove the soldering iron, you're going to influence the capacitor a little bit, and you might get a little bit of tug. And it might be difficult to get to the capacitor to stay exactly where you want it to. So you're going to have to hold it in place while you're removing your soldering iron, however you choose to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the first method on the remaining 3. Okay. Push this guy. All right, almost there. All right, so I'll give you a real quick close-up. So there's 4, there's the other 2 down there. All right, the next thing I want to solder in is I'm just going to take care of the last solder on piece, which is the voltage regulator. Now I handle the voltage regulator a lot in the way that I handle the capacitors, where I simply leave it in the area where it's supposed to be soldered onto. So you can see this little white square, and then you have some conducting, like a conducting rectangle just above it, or for you just below it, and then above it you have 3 little conducting squares there. So that's where that needs to be placed. So I'm going to put it just below that big rectangle. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some solder on there, keeping the soldering iron on it the entire time. And then just remove it. Very good. And then these 3 legs here are much easier to get once you have the first part in. So there you go, just like that.